Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the merciful, the beneficent. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Greetings of peace and blessings to all my brothers and sisters locally and across the nation and the world who are tuning in to ITV, this wonderful production of a series in which we have this blessed opportunity in this blessed month to talk about issues that pertain to Islam and to Muslims. My name is Afaf Nasher. I'm your sister here in CARE, New York, the Council on American Islamic Relations of New York. We are a civil rights and legal advocacy organization. What that means, my brothers and sisters, is that during this time, in this blessed month of Ramadan, in which we are increasing our ibadah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it means you have an organization who is constantly fighting for your right to be able to do so. That we are there to advocate for the Muslim brother and sister who's told that they cannot pray on the job. The youth who is told that there is no space for them to be able to do their salah, or that they need to be in the cafeteria watching others eat while they're fasting. Or maybe the sister who's walking down the street and is just trying to cover and to be in her faith when somebody else assaults her or calls her because of her religious identity. Or perhaps those that are coming in and out of the masjid space, doing their dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name, and people come in and actually assault the masjid or vandalize the masjid or oppose the masjid. These are all things that we contend with, and it is our privilege, it is our humble duty to be able to fight for Islam and fight for Muslims here. And we ask for all of you to remember us, to support us in your da'ah and in your charity, inshallah, so that we could continue to do this work for Muslims here locally and all over. Certainly what we do here impacts Muslims around the world. One of the things that we see time and time again can be very frightening for many Muslims, especially those who don't know their rights very well, and for first-generation immigrants. And it is the topic of law enforcement visits to people's homes. I want to give you a few examples, and you can tell me what they have in common. We had a sister who practices Islam, who wears hijab and dresses modestly. She wanted to go swimming, but of course, as Muslims, we're not going to wear a bathing suit in a public area. So she rented a home in an affluent area which had a private swimming pool, and she invited some of her fellow sisters, and they had a small vacation within that home, and then she went back home after her vacation. We had some young brothers who during Ramadan were at the masjid. They did their tarawih, mashallah. And then after Taraweeh, they went to the beach, which was local in their community, and they waited for the sunrise while they ate their sahur. And then afterwards, when Fajr came in, they simply prayed Fajr together, and then they went home. And then we have an imam who simply does his job at the masjid, doing the khutbahs and taking care of the masjid needs, and then he goes home thinking that his daily life is blessed because he has the opportunity not only to live Islam, but also to inspire others to do the same within his job of an imam. What do all these people have in common? Every single one of them was visited by FBI. Why, my brothers and sisters? There is no justifiable reason why these people were questioned by any kind of law enforcement agent based on the facts that I just gave you. And yes, those are the facts. You may think, Sister Afaf, that doesn't make any sense. You're in the United States, you're in New York, you have rights, you have freedoms. Just because someone takes a vacation home because she doesn't want to wear a bathing suit in public, or an imam doing his job at the masjid, or some young brothers who happen to pray at a beach during Fajr time, why? Why would they ever be visited and questioned by law enforcement? The answer is that hatred and prejudice and discrimination does in fact exist. And in each of those cases, someone reported something to law enforcement that made law enforcement have the capability by law to go and knock on somebody's door and ask questions about them. Now, here's where this impacts you. Just like I gave you these examples, this could also happen to you for no justifiable reason. In other words, you don't have to have done something criminal in order to have been questioned or attempted questioning by law enforcement agents. In other words, my brothers and sisters, we're all susceptible to it, regardless of how quiet you are, regardless of how moral you are, regardless of what an outstanding citizen you are. So it makes it really, really important for you to know what to do in these situations. And many of our community members don't know what to do. Many of our community members come from countries in which you have no rights with law enforcement, where you would be afraid to assert any rights against law enforcement. But here you do have rights. And it's important to understand what those rights are. I'm going to give you a couple of basic rights for you to be able to assert if, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbid, you ever find yourself in such a situation. But I also want to let you know that this is not legal advice. Every single situation may be different, and it's really important you consult with an attorney who can advise you on your particular issue and the facts that surround it. Also know that what I'm talking about are local rights. The rights that you have wherever you're watching this program may be slightly different or may be very different. And there may be some things that you can compare and say, yes, that makes sense. But without speaking to an attorney, you really, really need to make sure that you're taking what I say as general advice, but not legal advice. So let's get started. The first thing that you need to know, especially if you're living here in the United States, is that you do have rights in which you can assert with law enforcement, no matter what agency they come from. In other words, they can be your local police, they could be federal agents like the FBI, they can be a part of immigration services. All these different agencies have a law enforcement arm who can come and question you. And the situation we're about to talk about is if somebody comes, knock, knock, knock on your door. Now, let me ask you, what do you teach your children to do when somebody comes knocking on your door and they're a stranger? Isn't it natural to see who it is? Well, in those kinds of instances, the first thing you're supposed to do is to say, who is it? And if that FBI agent gives their identity, then don't open the door for them. In fact, just tell them to leave their business card in the mailbox. That, my brothers and sisters, is the #1 rule that you need to remember. And then you give that business card to your attorney, and they'll give you the legal advice you need thereafter. So remember that one piece of advice, assert it if you're in the United States of America, inshallah. And remember, you do have organizations who are doing this work for free. Jazakumullah khairan. I hope you never experience it, but if you do, count on us to be of assistance. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.